The less you respond, the more powerful you become. There is a person in your life right now who is waiting for you to react. They said something. They did something. Maybe they disrespected you. Maybe they dismissed you. Maybe they pushed every button you have. And deep inside, something is screaming at you to fire back, to defend yourself, to make them understand, to prove that you will not be treated that way. But what if the most powerful thing you could ever do is nothing? What if silence is not weakness? What if restraint is not cowardice? What if the person who refuses to react is not losing, but actually winning at a level the other person cannot even comprehend? Today, we go deep into one of the most misunderstood and underestimated principles in all of Stoic philosophy: the power of not responding, the discipline of silence, the strength that lives in stillness. Stay with this, because what you are about to hear may completely change the way you move through the world. Part 1. The illusion of the need to respond. We live in a world that has convinced us that every action demands a reaction. Someone insults you, you must clap back. Someone questions your worth, you must prove them wrong. Someone ignores you, you must make noise until they cannot ignore you anymore. This belief is deeply wired into the human mind. It feels natural. It feels justified. And for most people, it feels absolutely necessary. But Marcus Aurelius, emperor, warrior, philosopher, wrote something that shook the ancient world and still shakes the modern mind. He wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He was not talking about pretending pain does not exist. He was not talking about being passive or weak. He was talking about something far more radical: choosing where your energy goes. Every time you react impulsively, every time you fire back, snap, argue, defend, or chase, you are handing someone else the keys to your inner world. You are telling the universe that your peace can be rented out to whoever decides to provoke you today. Think about that. You have spent years building yourself, your values, your goals, your sense of who you are. And yet, a single comment from someone who barely knows you can hijack your entire day. The Stoics called this being enslaved by external things. And they considered it one of the most dangerous forms of captivity, because the chains are invisible. The less reactive you are, the more you reclaim yourself. The less you respond, the more you remind the world, and yourself, that you cannot be controlled. Part 2. Silence as a form of power. Let us talk about what silence actually communicates. Most people think silence means you have nothing to say. Most people think not responding means you are afraid, or hurt, or defeated. Most people are wrong. Epictetus was born a slave. He had no freedom, no rights, no power in the traditional sense. And yet, he became one of the most influential thinkers in human history. Because he understood something that his captors never did: no one can touch what is inside you unless you let them in. He taught that it is not what happens to you that disturbs you. It is your judgment about what happens to you. When you choose not to respond to provocation, you are making a judgment. You are saying, "This does not deserve my energy." You are saying, "I see what is happening here, and I choose not to play the game." You are saying, "My silence is not emptiness, it is authority." Consider how the most powerful people in any room often speak the least. Consider how the most dangerous predators in nature move in complete quiet. Consider how the most confident people you have ever met rarely feel the need to explain themselves, justify themselves, or fight back against every accusation. This is not coincidence. This is mastery. When you respond to every attack, you reveal everything. You reveal your insecurities. You reveal your triggers. You reveal exactly how to get to you. You hand the other person a map of your vulnerabilities and say, "Here, use this against me whenever you like." When you stay silent, when you receive the attack, breathe, and choose not to engage, you reveal nothing. You become unreadable. You become, in the truest sense of the word, untouchable. The Stoics called this equanimity. Not indifference. Not coldness. Not superiority. Just a deep, unshakable steadiness that does not rise and fall with the chaos around it. That steadiness is power. Part 3. The War Inside You. Here is the part no one talks about. Not responding is not easy. It is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Because silence, real silence, is not just the absence of words. It is the victory of your highest self over your lowest impulse. When someone hurts you and you stay silent, you are not doing nothing. You are fighting a war inside yourself that no one else can see. You are facing the fire of your anger, your pride, your fear, and you are choosing not to let it burn down everything around you. Marcus Aurelius wrote his most famous work, the Meditations, as private notes to himself. He was not writing for an audience. He was writing reminders. Because even as Emperor of Rome, arguably the most powerful man on earth at the time, he still had to fight himself every single day. He reminded himself not to waste energy on things outside his control. He reminded himself that other people's cruelty came from their own ignorance. He reminded himself that anger was always a choice, and always a surrender. If the Emperor of Rome needed daily reminders to stay calm, what does that tell us about how hard this work actually is? It tells us that the internal battle is real. It tells us that no one is immune to the pull of reaction. And it tells us that every single time you choose restraint over reaction, you are doing something genuinely heroic. Not heroic in the way movies show it, with explosions and speeches and applause. Heroic in the quiet way. The invisible way. The way that only you know about, in the privacy of your own chest, when the moment has passed and you are still standing. That is where real strength lives. Part 4. What you actually lose when you react. Let us be honest about what happens when you do react. When you fire back. When you defend yourself loudly. When you let someone pull you into their drama. You lose time, hours, sometimes days, replaying the conversation in your mind, crafting better comebacks, rehearsing arguments that will never happen. You lose energy, the kind of focused, creative energy that could have gone towards something you are actually building. A goal. A relationship. A dream. Instead, it gets burned up in a conflict that does not matter. You lose clarity, because anger clouds the mind. Seneca wrote that there is no more dangerous passion than anger, because it masquerades as courage while actually destroying judgment. And perhaps most importantly, you lose presence. You lose the thread of your own life. You become a character in someone else's story instead of the author of your own. The Stoics were relentless about this. They asked a simple question of every situation: does this lead toward virtue? Does this make me more of who I want to be? If the answer is no, if reacting would only make you more reactive, more bitter, more enslaved to outside opinion, then it is not worth the cost. The person who provoked you wants a reaction. That is, in fact, the entire point of the provocation. When you deny them that, you deny them the power they were reaching for. And that is a far greater victory than anything you could have said. Part 5. The Discipline of the Long Game. Here is where the philosophy becomes strategy. The Stoics were not just idealists. They were practitioners. They were soldiers and emperors and leaders who understood that life is not a single moment, it is a long game. And in the long game, your reputation is built not by what you say in moments of heat, but by how you carry yourself across years. Think about the people in history who lasted, who endured, who built something that actually survived. They were not the loudest. They were not the most reactive. They were the most consistent, the most disciplined, the most unshakable. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, reportedly responded to a harsh insult with nothing more than a calm remark and walked away. His students asked him why he did not respond more forcefully. He said something close to this: a donkey would not kick me just because a man kicks me. He was not going to lower himself to respond to behavior that was beneath him. This is not arrogance. It is discernment. It is the wisdom to know which battles are worth fighting and which battles are only designed to pull you down to someone else's level. Every time you stay silent in the face of provocation, you are investing in your long game. You are building a version of yourself that is harder to knock off course. You are cultivating the kind of inner stability that, over time, becomes absolutely unbreakable. And the world begins to notice. People notice when someone cannot be rattled. People notice when someone does not chase. People notice when someone has the kind of quiet confidence that does not need constant validation. That noticing changes how you are treated. It changes the dynamics of every relationship you are in. Because when people learn that you cannot be easily provoked, they stop trying. And when they stop trying, something shifts, they start to respect you instead. Part 6. The difference between silence and suppression. Now, something important needs to be said here, because there is a difference between Stoic silence and simply swallowing your pain. The Stoics were not asking you to pretend nothing hurts. They were not asking you to bury your emotions and let them rot inside you. That is not philosophy. That is denial. And denial always finds a way to destroy you eventually. What the Stoics taught was processing, not suppressing. Feel the anger. Acknowledge the hurt. Sit with it. Understand it. But do not let it make decisions for you. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the discipline of desire and the discipline of action, the idea that you examine what you want and what you are about to do before you do it. Not to eliminate emotion, but to ensure that emotion serves you rather than controls you. The silence of a Stoic is not the silence of someone who has given up or gone numb. It is the silence of someone who has felt everything, processed it internally, and chosen their response with full awareness. That is what separates a wise response from no response: intention. When you choose not to respond, it should be a choice, not a default. It should come from a place of clarity, not avoidance. If someone has genuinely wronged you in a way that needs to be addressed, address it. But address it calmly, at the right time, in the right way. Not in the heat of the moment. Not as a reaction. As a deliberate act. There is a profound difference between those two things. And mastering that difference is one of the greatest skills you can develop as a human being. Part 7. Applying this to your daily life. This is not ancient philosophy sitting on a shelf. This is living, breathing practice. Every day, you are given dozens of opportunities to react. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A coworker takes credit for your idea. A family member says something that lands like a slap. A stranger online writes something hateful. A friend lets you down. In each of these moments, there is a version of you that fires back immediately. And there is a version of you that pauses. That pause is everything. The Stoics recommended a practice they called the morning review and the evening review. In the morning, you prepare yourself mentally for the day, you anticipate difficulties, you remind yourself of your values, you ask yourself what kind of person you want to be when things get hard. In the evening, you review your day. Where did you hold your ground? Where did you get pulled off course? What would you do differently? Start doing this. Seriously. It sounds simple. It is not easy. But done consistently, it rewires the way you move through the world. You start to notice the pause becoming longer. You start to notice yourself choosing more often. You start to see that the things that used to ruin your entire day begin to shrink in their power over you. This is growth. This is the slow, quiet, invisible kind of transformation that changes a person at the root level. And it all starts with that pause. With that breath. With that choice not to respond. Part 8. What silence builds in you. Over time, the practice of non-reaction builds something remarkable inside you. It builds self-trust. Because every time you override your impulse and choose wisely, you prove to yourself that you can be relied upon. That you will not betray your own values in a moment of weakness. It builds emotional intelligence. Because when you stop reacting, you start observing. You start to understand what is actually happening in the situations around you, the insecurities beneath the insults, the fear beneath the anger, the need for control beneath the drama. It builds presence. Because you are no longer constantly in your head, replaying and rehearsing. You are actually here, in this moment, with your full attention available. And it builds something the Stoics prized above almost everything else: freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want. The deeper freedom, the freedom from being controlled by what happens to you. Epictetus made a distinction between things in our control and things outside our control. He said the entire art of living comes down to learning which is which, and directing your energy accordingly. Your opinions are in your control. Your choices are in your control. Your reactions are in your control. Everything else, other people's behavior, the world's events, what others say about you, is not. When you stop fighting the things you cannot control and start mastering the things you can, something extraordinary happens. Life gets simpler, clearer, more purposeful. You stop being a leaf in the wind and you become something rooted. Something that bends but does not break. Something that can face any storm and still be standing when it passes. Part 9. The person who cannot be rattled. There is a version of you that exists, not some idealized fantasy version, but a real, achievable version, who moves through the world with a quality that most people only dream of. This version of you does not need to have the last word. Does not need to be understood by everyone. Does not need constant approval to feel secure. This version of you responds rather than reacts. Chooses rather than impulsively fires. Leads from stillness rather than from noise. This is not a cold person. This is not a disconnected person. This is someone who has learned to love deeply, care deeply, and fight fiercely, but only for what actually matters. Not for ego. Not for pride. Not for the cheap win of the moment. The Stoics believed that this kind of person, this fully realized human being, was what they called the sage. And they were honest that no one fully achieves it. It is an ideal to move toward, not a destination you arrive at. But every choice you make in the direction of that ideal matters. Every time you breathe instead of blast. Every time you listen instead of lecture. Every time you let something go that your ego wanted to hold on to. Those moments are cumulative. They compound. They build a life. So here is where this ends. Someone is waiting for your reaction right now. Something happened that wants to pull you away from yourself. The world is loud and it is asking, demanding, that you be loud back. And the most radical thing you can do, the most stoic thing, the most powerful thing, is to be quiet. Not because you are afraid. Not because you do not care. But because you have decided that your inner peace is worth more than the temporary satisfaction of a comeback. Because you have decided that who you are becoming matters more than winning a moment. The less you respond, the more you conserve. The more you conserve, the more you grow. The more you grow, the more powerful you become, not in the way that shouts or demands attention, but in the way that simply cannot be moved. That is real power. And it is available to every single person who is willing to do the internal work. Start today. Start with the next provocation that comes your way. Breathe. Choose. Let it pass. And watch what happens to your life. If this reached something in you, if something here felt true, then you already know what kind of content lives on this channel. We go deep here. We do not do shallow. We talk about the kind of philosophy that actually changes how you live, how you lead, how you love, and how you handle the hardest parts of being human. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. Because there is so much more coming, on discipline, on resilience, on silence, on building a life that nothing and no one can take from you. This is your invitation. Join this community. Grow with it. The journey is just beginning.